Much like WandaVision now, we are waiting for reality begins. Willie Clark, we are back. We are better than ever. We are not talking Star Wars. We are talking the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel Cinematic Universe's first non-movie entertainment outing in the form of a TV show exclusively on Disney Plus. We are talking about WandaVision.
And we should have done this in black and white. We messed up.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just fix it in post. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Willie, the first two episodes dropped last week, and we were excited about it, didn't know what to expect. But what were your general opinions of the first two episodes of the MCU's foray into television?
Yeah, not great, I'd say.
Okay.
I mean, I do want to start off. Scarlet Witch is hands down my favorite Avenger. And I do think it's worth bringing up too, is that comics is the one area of nerddom that I'm completely blind to. So I'm coming at this just from watching the Marvel movies, and even within them, some of them are good, some of them are bad. I would by no means say I'm a diehard Marvel-eer, whatever we wanna go with. But
True believer.
yeah, there we go. But I was excited for WandaVision. And I knew, like, I'd done some reading, and like I kind of knew what they were going to go for with her constructing this reality type thing, and it was going to be like mysterious and weird and goofy. I mean, it was definitely mysterious and weird.
It certainly was. We'll get into what we thought worked and didn't work, but my general impressions were I expected there to be a little bit more of like a narrative. For the first two episodes, I guess I expected the black and white. I know that the show is going to jump eras, jump sitcoms.
Mm-hmm.
This is grafted on, but I expected that to be kind of just like the set dressing as opposed to the entire like crux of the first two episodes. So I was a little thrown by that, but overall I have a very wait and see approach to this show. So I thought that there were fun moments in the first two episodes. I thought there were interesting threads. The thing I keep saying to people is I got a very Westworld season 1 vibe from this, which it appears as though there are little tidbits of information that will become important later once you can see the whole picture. And I think for some people that might not be the way they want to consume TV, is like they just want to know a linear story, or if it's not linear, they want to at least be on the ride.
Yeah.
And the thing with Westworld season 1, and I think the thing with WandaVision so far, is that you have to like physically put yourself on the ride like constantly. Like you have to constantly keep engaging. So I didn't expect that, but on the second episode, I was like prepped for that, and I kept putting myself in. And the Marvel comics, like I know a fair amount. I'm not a scholar of the 616 universe, but I know my way around. So I'm really trusting that the comic stories I think this show is based on are strong enough that there is enough good story here. And I do trust Kevin Feige because he's really never led us astray. So I'm taking a very wait and see approach, as I did for Westworld season 1, and overall enjoyed that to an extent. And I think I will enjoy this. So I'm taking a very wait and see approach, but I was generally positive to mixed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I will say, and I do think it's interesting that we got two episodes at once. I do think the second episode was stronger. And I did see there was definitely some conversation going around about that. If that was the reason we got two at once, was they knew that just dropping the first one wasn't going to have quite the impact that they were hoping for. So there could have been a little, I mean, that's it's interesting to see Disney in the digital age do that, because I mean that's something that networks used to do if they'd move episodes around, or if they had to burn off a show or something like that. But yeah, so it's possible Disney kind of knew it needed a little more to get going. I don't know.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that, and I kind of think that that's probably what they did. I had suspected that they were just trying to front load Q1, because right after WandaVision ends, Falcon and Winter Soldier picks up, I believe, if not the next week, but the week following. So they're really rolling right into it, and I think they're trying to do a big push until summer hits, and then they'll probably take a lull and then pick back up with Loki and whatever Star Wars content we have in the fall. So that was my initial impression, but I think you're right. I think that if you had just released the first episode, I think there would be a lot to be desired, because, just getting into it, at the end of the second episode, we transition to color. We age up the eras a little bit. It looks like we're going to the 70s, because we spent the first two episodes in what I imagine was the 50s and then the 60s. Or some people are saying both 60s, but I thought it was more of a 50s, 60s vibe. And then we're just going to keep going eras. But let's get into stuff we did like. So what was your favorite part about the first two episodes?
Yeah, so I think anything. So there were a couple moments, and these were the mystery box moments, and I think those were my favorite. Whenever something was happening that you knew was like off kilter a bit. This happened when when you saw the red blood, which is which is right out of The Giver, almost exactly out of The Giver, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But then too, when Wanda, I think that was right around the same time when she was hearing her name on the radio, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So like when she's hearing her name on the radio, and then I don't remember the specifics from episode 1, but the times when like this is not what it's supposed to be, like those little breadcrumbs that they're planting are interesting. I'm just not sure. It's almost like it's interesting that you said what that is the whole thing, because it reminds me of like what CSI used to do, and what what procedural dramas used to do, is they'd have this whole plot that was just the episode plot,
right,
and then at the end they'd have 2 minutes that advanced the story.
Yes.
And then that set up the next episode, and then the next episode had its own plot, so on and so forth. But I mean, I don't think the plots of them trying to fit in are really gonna fold into the larger narrative. I think they were just, let's do wacky and goofy sitcom-y plots, and then dovetail some stuff in at the end. We'll see. But yeah, so those the stuff where you knew something was broken, I think was my favorite.
Yeah. And I think, we can talk about a little bit the episode structure, but it's kind of, that's how, I mean, comic storytelling now has gone more into their, writers are writing for the trade, the collected edition. So they're writing 6 issues, arcs. But that kind of approach, the way you're talking about the episodic, formulaic, CSI type, like 2 minutes of advancement, is how kind of the old comics used to work, where there would be a standalone story that anyone could jump onto. And the last page was usually like a cliffhanger to keep you reading. Like Stan Lee was very famous for that in his writing. So I do think that was intentional, but I just don't think the execution is where it needs to be. Or again, still I'm on the wait and see train. But my favorite part that you mentioned actually was the radio scene, because I knew, going into this, we knew that this is going to be a fiction, and the show doesn't come out and say this, and Disney hasn't come out and said this, but like the show is clearly a fictional reality that Wanda has created. I think that's very clear in the marketing, and through the first 2 episodes you get moments of that, especially when she sees the beekeeper and she says no and the time rewinds. But when the radio comes in and someone is clearly trying to contact Wanda, and I'm sure we're going to keep track of who we think the voice is. I've heard Captain America, I've heard Doctor Strange, which I think would make the most sense. if this is like, again, we talked about this is like part of the trilogy of this, the next Doctor Strange movie, and then the Spider-Man movie,
Yep.
all taking place in the multiverse. So I really like the radio because I didn't expect an element. I expected the element of mystery to be around her and how she was creating this and what was going on. I didn't expect the added element of mystery of like who could possibly be trying to get her out. So I really like that. But were you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, now they're dead, right? Or like,
Wanda's alive.
oh,
Vision is dead.
so it's just Vision that died. Okay.
But this could take place in the 5-year span between Infinity War and Endgame, where she is dead, depending on how anyone wants to think about that. So there's possibilities for sure. But did anything surprise you about the first 2 episodes?
Yeah, I think I gotta go with the fake infomercials for the built-in.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, so we have it was the Stark toaster and the Hydra watch.
Yes.
And so two things there. I mean, it's always fun when shows do those fake product placement things. But then obviously those are not, those are 2 names that even if you've slept through half of the Marvel movies, you probably have some familiarity with. And I think it's enough to get people to go, oh, okay, so something's going on here somewhere, like, so those were cool little surprises there.
The tagline for the Stark toaster was "Forget the past, this is your future." A little on the nose, but I thought fun. And then obviously the Hydra watch was the Strucker, and Baron von Strucker, obviously the Hydra agent from Age of Ultron, who was responsible for creating Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. So a nice little tie-in there. But yeah, I liked the infomercials. I'm glad you brought those up because I did not expect that. I thought it was nice, and I have it. I have it as one of our in and outs, but I think we're both in on those. So the thing I was surprised about is in the first episode they're having Vision's boss and wife over for dinner. And there is a moment where the entire episode hinges around that and Wanda trying to set up the dinner and they're trying to entertain. But there's a moment when they are eating and the boss starts to choke, seemingly because Wanda is making him choke. And the wife keeps saying, "Stop it," first to the husband as like he's just kidding. And then she keeps saying, "Stop it." And she gets a worried face. And then she starts looking at Wanda. And then she's looking at no one, almost as if to say, hey, whoever's like watching this, whoever's like monitoring the situation, like please stop her and please stop the situation. So I was like, whoa. I really enjoyed that because, again, I didn't expect these elements to come in and out. I thought this was all going to be an inside Wanda's head thing. But it seems as though, to me, just reading the first 2 episodes, that there are characters that are coming in and out from actual reality into Wanda's like fake reality. And I know I'm making you so upset.
No. It's just so one of the things that I know I'm gonna have that I'm gonna struggle with this show is it's already making my head hurt.
Yeah.
Because there's so many. There's obviously the actors, there's the plain level of actors and actresses acting this out.
Yes.
But then there's the characters they are playing, and then there's the characters in the heads that they think they're playing. And like Wanda, even Vision, when at the end of the episode when she asks Vision if it's real, even Vision seems to know something's not quite right.
Yeah, he pauses before he says yes.
So there's like, and so it's like, is this the way I'm kind of reading it? I think is that it's almost like a in-universe performance type thing. Yeah. Like, and I mean, we see the end shot there that someone's taking notes and like someone is watching it on a screen, presumably watching what's going on in Wanda's head on a screen, but maybe not. So it's weird because then it's okay. So Wanda is a character in this universe who's imagining fake universe that is then representing the real 50s and 60s that she is remembering from watching TV shows. Maybe like there's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of layers for sure. So jumping into that, is the brain hurting something that you disliked, or what did you not like about the first two episodes or the show as a whole?
That's something that I definitely didn't like. And I mean, I think it took me a bit, so I'm glad we waited a few days to record this, because I was really struggling with trying to figure out why I didn't think the first two episodes worked. And you know, this is a show that I don't think we talked on at all in any of our Star Wars shows, because there's not really many lines you can draw. But one of the things that I think Community does so well is, even if you don't necessarily understand the references or the gags or the things that it's spoofing, it's still enjoyable or funny or heartwarming. These two episodes, like, having watched very, very little Nick, I mean, I watched some Nick at Night, but not enough that I'm going to pick up on the jokes and stuff that they're making. If you didn't watch any of these 50s or 60s shows growing up, I think you're going to miss a lot of what they were trying to do. There were a few jokes that they did that I think modern audiences would pick up on with no knowledge whatsoever. But I think, because I saw so much positive reaction to the episodes initially, but I think it was from a lot of people who really, really knew TV.
Yeah.
And so I think if you remove that layer of understanding, I just don't think I don't think they hold up, you know, without understanding everything else that's going on around it. But
yeah, that's a good point, and I actually felt the same, but for the other reason of, I thought, to exactly what you're saying, I thought that if you didn't have a pretty decent working knowledge of Marvel Comics history, that a lot of the stuff that was happening would just go over your head, and you're like, what? Like, why was there a helicopter, and what's that, and who's the beekeeper, and all of that? It's like,
I have no idea who the beekeeper is. Yeah,
we'll get into it in Comics Corner, but yeah, so that's interesting you said. So now, I did watch a lot of Nick at Night and I Love Lucy, so I got the more slapsticky fun. Like, I got like the two beds. So the second episodes, like, I thought that was very cute. But again, you know me, I'm always looking for, how does this serve the narrative purpose? At what point does this have to the larger story? Like, why is Wanda envisioning decades of old TV? So I'm interested to see how that plays off. But it's surprising that you said that that would be a block to you, because I think you're right. Also, because the MCU now started in 2008. It's been around for 12 years. But for any kids that are younger than us, like, all of this has to be, any kids that have no idea what Nick at Night is in the first place and have
never seen black and white television.
Yeah. And also who don't read comics and just watch the movies, like, this must be absolutely maddening for them.
Yeah.
This must be, what is this?
And so one thing I want to point out too is, so like you mentioned with the pulling the beds together joke, and so that, you know, that's another layer that kind of threw me, because that was a joke that Vision and Wanda were making for an imaginary audience that was watching it, really.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, so now Wanda and Vision know that I'm watching this show, so they know it's a show in a fake reality, in Wanda's head, in an envisioned reality, like.
And added to the other layer that those scenes were shot in front of a live studio audience.
Wait, were they really?
The scenes of, like, the sitcom-y scenes, yes, not the ones in the house, yes.
That's kind of excellent, actually. I like that a lot. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so it's like, okay, so now that, and that's the tricky thing, that when you start doing wall breaking humor, is how is it all fitting in, and that's where I think you're exactly right, is that I think we don't have that whole picture yet of how this fits into the narrative, and hopefully it does, because I do think you can't just, I mean, you could the show could just be decade spoofs, and they don't really serve a larger purpose than that, but I don't think that's what they're going for.
I don't think so either. I think it will become clearer. I don't know if it'll be 100% satisfying because it's a big swing. But maybe I'm wrong, and it'll be great, and the whole thing, the whole tapestry will reveal itself to be wonderful. But what are some things or something that you just overall liked about the first 2 episodes?
I actually like the black and white.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think, and even more so, like that you mentioned, you know, for kids and for the MCU, and for this really being the MCU's first, you know, Disney show on a, you know, first TV show on a Disney thing. Doing that in black and white's kind of brave, I think. You know, I think that's a big risk, and I think it's cool that they did it like that. I mean, even just going with a weird concept like WandaVision and Wanda and Vision as characters for their first, you know, tentpole show is interesting. So yeah, I think it was cool black and white. And I actually, have you seen any of the pictures of the set in color?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so it looks really cool. And so so someone, whoever was talking about it throughout the question, and I don't know if anyone answered it or not, but is the sets actually really bright colors? And so it's interesting if they may have done it, the colors specifically to get certain gray, like black and white tones.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, which would be even more interesting. So yeah.
I think that was an I Love Lucy thing also, if I'm remembering correctly, that they would use very like specific colors to get the right values of black and gray and white. So interesting. I really liked Paul Bettany's drunk vision when he gets gum stuck in his gears, and I thought that was just like, I didn't think he was great the first 2 episodes, but I thought, you know, I was like, well, you know what, this is just fun, something to do. And I'm trying to keep my like for something outside of Comics Corner. I'm trying to keep it like show adjacent. But
I don't think I mean, I don't know. I wasn't buying his drunk vision.
No.
Like I don't know what it was. Like I get, and like I'm okay. Like I'm okay with like the weird animated cutoffs of like the gum getting stuck. Like that works for me. Like we can go with that. Like he's a machine.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Something about it wasn't quite working. But I mean, it is interesting because then, I mean, Wanda's the one holding everything together in her fake reality.
Right. I was going to say perhaps it's Wanda's interpretation of what a malfunctioning Vision would be.
I know.
Because he is technically dead. So that's the one thing to remember, is that Vision is technically dead. And unless there's some nonsense with what Shuri pulled out of his consciousness in the end of Infinity War to be able to recreate him, Vision is dead. So he is a construction of Wanda's mind in this, along with most, probably everyone else, except for the characters that I think are coming in from real reality. So interesting. And get ready for so many headaches.
That's why I hate time travel.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, but I mean, that is a good point, is we could be seeing Vision through Wanda's reinterpretation of him, not necessarily Vision as Vision is. That is true.
Right. Okay, let's do, I'm going to save Observe for Comics Corner because I think those are the things we want to talk about. But let's do some quick in and outs, and then we'll jump over to Comics Corner.
Let's do it.
All right, so first, the 50s, 60s black and white setting.
Yep, I'm in.
Yeah, me too. When the Vision's boss asks what their story is, and neither Wanda nor Vision knowing the answer.
I'm out. I think that was a little too, because they pulled that several times over the course of the 2 episodes.
Yep.
And it was just a little too on the nose for what they were trying to do. Yeah.
Agreed. The commercials.
Yep, I'm in on the commercials.
Yeah, love those. I'm excited to keep watching those. The color appearing in subtle places in the first 2 episodes. So the blood, the helicopter.
Yeah, I'm here for that.
Okay. We already talked about this, but the pedestrian episode story. So the story of the first episode is that Vision's boss is coming to dinner, and the story of the second episode is Vision and Wanda are involved in a talent show.
I think so. I'm gonna say in asterisks. I'm okay with, because those are both very typical sitcom-y plots.
Yes.
And I'm okay with them doing that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think both of these, and now I'm kind of arguing against myself. The first one I don't think really served much of another purpose. The second one at least works on the other level of them trying to fit into this fake town.
Yes.
So it kind of has, and I mean, so the first one does do that too, because he's kind of tried to fit into work and stuff like that. But I think that if they're like, I like the idea of them doing traditional sitcom-y things. I just think it needs to have another level on it.
Agreed. I'm going to give you the reason why I'm in, and it's because I noticed that even though they're both disastrous, like the dinner, it goes terribly, and the talent show goes horribly. But at the end of both of those scenarios, Wanda and Vision are both successful. So the boss offers Vision a promotion on his way out. And at the end of the talent show, they win. So I took that to read that Wanda is like layering in that no matter how bad things happen, how bad things go for them, there is still a way out. There is still a happy ending to be tacked on. Now, that could just be me wanting to read into that, but I think it gives a reason for why those things happen. And also, it layers into the sitcom thing of like, no matter what happens in any given episode of those shows, like there's generally a fun, happy ending.
It's all right by the end of it, yeah. Well, and I mean, but I mean, you know, we also could look at it as, you know, Wanda is forcing these good endings because she knows there's not a good ending for her and Vision.
Right. Maybe that's why she's tied herself into TV, is because it always works out in the end, even though she had to watch her lover get his face ripped off by a giant purple grimace robot alien man. So
I think this is completely sidetracked, but I think I think if I want this show to be set in the time between when both of them are dead.
Okay, I'm into that.
That's what I think. I think that to me is where things can get really interesting.
Well, my last in and out was the reality bending timey-wimey. It's hard.
Okay. I'm gonna say I'm in on the concept of the show still, but I'm out on its execution so far.
Yep.
That's what I'm gonna say.
I agree. Okay, we're gonna jump into Comics Corner. So Comics Corner is gonna be where I not mansplain or explain
what's going on. Yeah,
I don't want it to be like that, but here are things that I noticed. So we talked about the voice already. Here's a fun one. Their Vision and Wanda's house number is 2800. Okay. So the Marvel universe has designations for the multiple worlds in the multiverse.
Yes.
So the main universe is called the 616. But Marvel has said in the comics that the MCU takes place in universe 2800, which I thought was nice. So that's their house number in the show. So that's a nice little nod to the MCU.
Wait a second. So the MCU is its own fictional universe within the metaverse? Oh my God.
Correct.
Who lets comic writers do this shit?
Oh, believe me, Willie, if we wanted to get really deep into comics, multiverses, and metaverses,
I know.
We would have to do an On Stranger Tides episode where I explain DC's new metaverse to you, and you would not be happy.
Okay. But that's okay. That's a cool little nod.
Yeah.
But at least though I will throw this out there, at least we now know that WandaVision is set in the same universe, presumably as the rest of the MCU so far.
Yes.
Which without that nod, I don't think we would have necessarily known.
Agreed. That's fair. It's a nice little and also in the Vision miniseries, which is what a lot of this I think is borrowing from. Their Vision's house number in that is 616. So I think this is a nice little send up.
Nice.
To in the second episode, we are introduced to, I don't know if she gives her name. I'm trying to remember, but it's character she's playing is Monica Rambeau. So Monica Rambeau was last seen in the movie Captain Marvel as the young girl who is the daughter of Maria Rambeau, who is Captain Marvel's friend. So Monica Rambeau, obviously grown up here, and she is in the comic. She becomes the second Captain Marvel after Carol Danvers.
Oh, so is it? Oh, so is it really her, or is she imagining her?
Yeah. So here's my thing, and this ties back into the other thing is, at the end of the first episode, we pull out to reveal someone watching the screens, and there is a notebook that has a sword logo on it. In the second episode, the helicopter that Wanda picks up has a sword logo on it. And then the beekeeper comes up out of the ground, and the back of his beekeeper outfit is the sword logo. So, sword in Marvel Comics is a counterpart to shield. If you couldn't get those analogies, but sword is the space version of shield. So, dealing with extraterrestrial threats. And at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, if you remember, the post-credit stinger is Nick Fury on a space station.
Yes.
And we all took that to believe that there is a big space station in the Marvel Universe, and that is the Sword space station. So I think that is where Wanda is, and it would make sense as dealing with extraterrestrial threats for Monica Rambeau to be on the Sword space station. So that makes sense why she's there. To me, that makes sense why Sword is watching them, and that's where Wanda is. So she's up in space, is my guess.
So now, not only is she creating a fake reality, she's also in space.
Yes, and dealing with possibly aliens.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've seen aliens before. That's no big.
True.
That's
true.
I can handle that. I'm good with that. I'm okay.
Right. Wanda is pregnant at the end of the second episode. In the comics continuity, the thing that starts this whole Wanda, there's a whole storyline called House of M where Wanda basically creates a dystopian universe. And before that, she is responsible for the Avengers Disassembled story arc. But the reason she loses her mind at first is she imagines, she uses her chaos magic to will into existence two kids of her and Vision. But obviously Vision cannot have children because he's a synthezoid. I always remember what Vision technically is. It's not like an android, or it's called something specific, like a synthezoid, I believe is the word. And that's what causes her to kind of lose it in the comics. So having her be pregnant is interesting because that's what tips her over the edge. But in the MCU, it's Vision's death is the thing that looks like it's tipping her over the edge. So I wonder where that's going to go.
Well, and it's interesting, one of the things that I thought about with the kid is, that's another classic sitcom trope is, and especially in older TV shows where they're not knowing what to do with their female characters. So I'm curious to see if they're playing off that idea a bit of, Wanda is presumably the one in control of her own fake universe, and so she's the one who seems to want children.
Yes.
and is now giving them to herself in her wish fulfillment of this fantasy universe, which is interesting. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Along with a nice job for her family and being liked by the town, which is different from Wanda, who in the MCU is one of the most disliked Avengers because of the events of Captain America Civil War, where she indirectly kills a bunch of people. So interesting that she's trying to rewrite history where that she is beloved by people around her. All right, last thing in Comics Corner. And this
Beekeeper? Is it the Beekeeper?
We talk about the Beekeeper. The Beekeeper, I don't have a full read on. So just there's not a specific Beekeeper character in Marvel to like pull to. However,
Okay.
there's another group called AIM, who is kind of separate from Sword and Shield. Yes, and they are all acronyms. But the AIM like soldiers, goons typically wear outfits that are bright yellow and with the hoods, and they are called kind of like colloquially by characters the Beekeepers because they're bright yellow outfits. But there's a sword logo on the back of this, so I don't know if they're merging AIM and Sword. Um, I don't know, but that's my only read on the Beekeeper for now. Is that the Beekeeper name is something attributed to AIM agents in the comics. We'll see. The last thing, and this is almost the most overt comics thing I noticed, and it's the character of Agnes, the next door neighbor. So the character of Agnes, I think, is almost assuredly the comic book character Agatha Harkness, not only because you can just truncate Agatha Harkness into Agnes, but when she first shows up, she offers a plant to Wanda, which in the Vision miniseries, Agatha Harkness is in the Marvel Comics continuity. She is a witch, one of the original witches from the Salem witch trial. She's immortal, or some kind of immortal. She is always around. She is a villain primarily, but like helps Wanda almost as like a guide. She kind of helps her develop her chaos magic and all that nonsense. But in the Vision comics, there is a specific plant that if you do some kind of spell with, it shows you a specific future, whatever. Anyways, doesn't matter. She offered a plant, which is your first guess, or my first read on it, in addition to the truncated of the name. And then also in the opening credits of the second episode, it's like a little cartoon of whatever it is. But there is a shot where the cartoon Wanda is walking through the supermarket, and there are ads in the background of the supermarket. One of the ads says Auntie A's cat litter. So Agatha Harkness in the comics is almost always shown holding a cat. So there is also a brooch that she wears in the second episode, which looks very similar to the brooch that Agatha wears in the comics. So I think that she most definitely is playing that character, which is interesting for a few reasons. Number one, Agatha Harkness in the comics is like 100 years old always. Like, even though she's immortal and was around in the Salem witch trial, she's always an old woman.
Old woman, okay.
And number two, she's played by, I think it's Catherine Hahn, who is primarily a comedic actress. Like, you know her from Step Brothers. And I mentioned that to someone, and I think their response was valid in that was probably purposeful, so that to throw audiences off the scent. But that's all I have for Comics Corner. So I think we are definitely going to get that character reveal at some point of Agatha Harkness, and we will keep track of the Beekeeper and Captain Marvel 2 and Sword. But let's wrap it up with this. Is WandaVision so far what you were expecting it to be?
I think so. I mean, obviously, I was hoping I would enjoy it more, but it has been very weird. And I expected it to be a weird take on stuff. And even if I don't enjoy it, like I'd rather see them go super weird with something like this and see what happens and have it fail than keep doing. I mean, the Marvel movies are very formulaic, and this is them doing something weird and different and interesting, and yeah, go for it.
100% agree, because like I said, we are getting Falcon and Winter Soldier right after this, and I think that will be just a protracted sequel to the Captain America movies. I think it'll be an 8-episode, whatever. It's a three movies in one of a Captain America sequel. I think it will be very by the numbers. So I am 100% here for the weird Marvel to take a big swing and set us up for more multiverse stuff.
Now here's two other quick thoughts I had. So one, this is 8 episodes as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering if and when, if it will get a season 2, and when we'll find out if it does get one. That's kind of the same thing we talked about with Mandalorian, like where are they going with these stories? And I think it may tip their hand a little bit what they're doing with the rest of the MCU, in terms of even Winter Soldier or all of them. Are we looking at a bunch of one season, as we think of them in the TV world, arcs of shows that only last for one season, and then it becomes something else, and it's an 8-episode show, and then they go through that? Or will some of them develop into multi-seasonal things? So
yeah, it's an interesting thought. So I read a report earlier that Disney Plus and HBO Max are having problems right now with churn.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So basically, people are signing up and they're watching something and they're canceling their service, so they can't keep people on the service. So it seems to me that with the investors meeting, which we talked about, that with all of the shows they announced, that I think that right now they're just going to launch everything they possibly can, and they'll just see what works. So I think WandaVision season 2 is totally dependent on the amount of viewers that it keeps. And that's a little frustrating for me because I want there to be a reason why this show exists and a plan for it. And right now, I don't know if it's a Disney mandate to keep creating content, or if Feige is like, hey, I need all of these shows to launch characters to then work into an Avengers movie, or hey, I have an idea for a show, and Disney's like, okay, but if it works, you got to make another one. So
and that's where it gets that's where it gets interesting between the the creative realities of developing something like this, because I could see it both ways. I could see it that Feige very much has his plan and says, okay, we've got WandaVision is going to lead into this show, and then it could be another show with Wanda, but maybe it's not WandaVision. And he has these, presumably we're going to cover some ground in this, but we don't know in what state Wanda and Vision will be in when this series ends. We also don't know necessarily where in the timeline we're going to be. So presumably this could end, and then maybe we do get a second season, similar to what they did with like Jessica Jones and all them, where everything kind of rotated through, and second season comes back in. There's lots of I mean, the sky is really the limit with what they could do. So
yeah, it's exciting. I think we're both in agreement that I'm more positive, you a little bit more negative, that we want to see how it plays out. We want to see if the execution picks up a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing that I'm hoping doesn't happen, and it may end up being what happens, but I don't want the mystery to be the only thing carrying the show.
Yeah.
And I think right now, like, and I mean, and it's interesting because it's almost, with the small cliffhangers at the end, that's definitely built more towards a binging schedule than the weekly schedule that they're doing right now. So it'll be interesting if people who watch it all at once when it comes out at the end enjoy it more than people who have had to wait a week. There's lots of interesting, there's lots of interesting TV theory things and at play here. But yeah, I think that's my main hope, is just I don't want the only reason to be watching it is, well, what mysterious thing, what riddle are we gonna get? I don't want this to be lost. Let's not have this.
Yeah, we don't want another loss. But that'll do it for the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. Willie, thank you, and we will be back next week after episode 3 drops, and who knows, maybe we'll get a Quicksilver back from the dead, because Wanda's just gonna create her brother.
Or she pulls Magneto in, her true father.
Okay, if we get before we wrap this up, if we get Magneto in this show, and it's like Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender.
I know some comic stuff.
Yeah, if it's one of those two, or even just Magneto as a character in general. Like if her father is introduced, all the nerds' heads are collectively going to explode.
Yeah.
Now that Marvel has control of the X-Men and they can actually say mutants instead of enhanced, as the MCU was doing before that. But all very interesting. We'll keep track of it. Willie, thank you again, and we'll see you around the 2800.
See ya.